right, folks, good evening and welcome to the Canarian International Group meeting. I'm going to hand you over to our speaker, and our speaker tonight is WES. Take it away, WES.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure what time it is where everybody else is. My name is Wes. I am an alcoholic. Whew. First and foremost, I want to give praise and honor to God for waking all of us up this morning and allowing us to be here in a sober state of mind, hopefully, and that we will be able to stay sober a day at a time as we listen to each other talk about what it's been like, what it is like, what it was, and what it is like now. Um, I often start my story by saying, this is not something I wanted to do as a grown up. As a kid, I had all kinds of dreams and aspirations on what I thought I could become as a result of growing up. I didn't realize the work that it would take to get to where I am in life today, and I wasn't sure how to do it. And I say that because I come from a family of 8 kids, and my family was somewhat disruptive. My dad was constantly on the go. Um, we never had much of anything, and I was so confused as a child. I was confused as to, I didn't understand the difference between black and white. I mean, there were incidences that were happening. They talk about black people weren't this and white people were, and I'm like, I couldn't understand it. I went to school, I got along with all my friends, and I just didn't understand segregation. I did not understand that. I didn't understand the fact that we were poor, why we were poor. Um, I had my mother used to send us to church every Sunday. And when we went to church, I would hear all these great stories about a God. And the story sounded great, but I couldn't understand why, if God was so great, why was my life, my family life, the way it was? So I had I guess you might say I had a resentment towards God because, why couldn't we have, excuse me, why couldn't we have more money, more food, a better place to stay? My dad and mom being together. I didn't understand that. And then when my mom decided she was going, I'm originally from Springfield, Massachusetts. My mom decided she was going to move from Springfield to Detroit, Michigan, place I had never heard. I mean, I heard of it because in school they talk about the states and all of that. But she took me and my brothers and sisters to Detroit, Michigan, and we were all alone. At least in Springfield, we had relatives that we could call upon, and they would help us out somewhat every so often. But in Detroit, we didn't have, at least I didn't have, my brothers and sisters and I, we didn't have anyone outside of my mom. And her being an adult, she could go out and make friends. It was hard for me to make friends. Perhaps so much for my brothers and sisters also. But we were there for like 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and slowly but surely we made a few friends. And the funny thing about living in Detroit, nothing got better. We were still poor. We still lived in decrepit places. We still had no food. What food we got from the state. But one of the funniest things when I remember about it, is that the only thing that kept us, my brothers and sisters and I, going was the fact that we were going to a particular church that often gave out goodies to the kids. We go to church, they'd give us food, they'd give us candy. Every so often they give us like a sweater or a pair of pants or something like that. And it was great. I loved it. I wasn't going there because God, I couldn't see it was God working into my life. All I knew was I was getting something that I never had. And that still wasn't enough. I started stealing from kids in my classroom. I just wanted what they had. I didn't have it, so I wanted what they had. And one day I got caught, and my principal asked me, he said, "Did you steal that person's lunch or candy, whatever I took from them?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but I'm going to take you home to your mother." And he took me home to my mom and explained to her what was going on. And my mom said, "Just tell the truth." And I said, I didn't do it." And she beat me in front of the principal. And then she said, "Now take him back to school." And I'm like, wow. You talk about confused. I was really confused. Um, Maybe a year or so later, I'm playing in our this alleyway with my brothers and sisters and what little friends we had. And this car pulled up. And in this car, I don't know who was in this car, but this car was beautiful. It was like a I don't know, orange and white. For some reason, orange and white comes to mind, a Buick. And this guy gets out of the car, and for some reason, don't ask me how I remember it, but for some reason, I ran up to this guy and I said, "Hi, you must be my dad." And he was like, "Yeah, I am." My mother saw me run across the street to greet this, what she considered a stranger. And she brought me in the house, invited him in the house, and she beat me again. And I'm like, "I don't understand. It's my father." She's like, "I told you never ever to run up to strangers." He wasn't a stranger. For some reason, I felt him being my dad. Well, anyway, he ironed out a plan that he'd come back when we graduated from, well, when school was out, and he's going to take us back to Springfield to visit. And he took us back to Springfield. I have never seen Detroit, Michigan since. Thank God. In fact, a couple of years back when they were going to have just before COVID started, they were going to have the international convention in Detroit. I was like, I'm not going. There's nothing in Detroit that I want to see at all. So Detroit and me were off limits. But anyway, I came back to Springfield. Um, Things got a little bit better. My dad he split us up actually. My sisters went with my aunts and uncles. And we went and lived with my grandmother. And my grandmother was a great cook. I mean, we had plenty of food, we had heat, and even the clothes were even better. And slowly but surely, I started to see a few things. And that's when I started to understand that my dad might have had a problem with, I'll say alcohol. I don't know what else he was involved with, but every so often he'd get crazily drunk, and he'd come home and he'd consume everything that was on the table or in the pots and pans, and then on occasions, the police would come and pick him up. They would accuse him of doing something, and I just couldn't believe it. But anyway, as he went away to these often vacations that he took, kids used to pick on me. They made me feel less than. They'd call me like they'd tell me like my dad was a jailbird, and I was short, I was skinny, I was left-handed. You know, they had enough to badger me with, but then they would tell me my dad was a jailbird, and that bothered me, and it bothered me mainly because I'm named after my dad. I'm the third. There's my grandfather, there's my dad, and then it was me. And I had no clue what was going on in life, but I hated the life that I was living. I started hanging out with kids who did crazy stuff, like stealing cars. 13 years old, I stole my grandfather's car because it was something to do. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people to like me, because I wasn't good at making friends. But slowly but surely, I grew, I started growing up. I started going to junior high. In junior high, to make all of my life, I tried to make friends. And making friends for me was laughing and joking about everything. I made a joke about everything. There was a time that my sixth grade teacher put me in a box and put me behind a door because I was disruptive. And he said, "You will stay there until the class is over. And when class was over, he said, "So what did you think about sitting in the box all, for the whole duration of the class?" And I laughed. I'm like, ha, ha, ha. And one of the things he said, he's like, "Well, I want you to go home and tell your school." He said, what happened? I don't know
Wes,
if he,
I've just turned your camera off because we're having some problems with the audio, but you've come in through fine now.
okay, yeah, it's telling me my internet is unstable. But anyway, my Mr. Cunningham sent the letter home to my dad and told him about what he had done, putting me behind the school, behind in a box behind the door. And I came home and my dad said, "So how was school?" I said, "I had a great day in school." He said, "Anything happened this week that I should know about?" And I said, "No." And of course, he gave me a spanking, a beating at that time. My dad didn't spank you; he beat you. And he's like, I hate for you to lie to me. I want you to always be able to tell me the truth, no matter what's going on in your life." And again, so confused. I just wanted to run away and hide. But as time went on, my dad went on another vacation. I ended up living with, I ran away from home from my mother. Told her I hated her. Um, Ended up living with my grandmother, stole from her. I got I used to steal a sip of my uncle's Fleshman's whiskey. He would ask me to go fetch his bottle, and I go fetch his bottle, steal a couple of dollars from him, and taste his Fleshman's. And for some reason, I don't know, I couldn't understand why people would drink stuff that they were drinking, especially this Fleshman's, because all it did was made the room spin. So slowly but surely, I made it through junior high, got into high school. Again, not having too much. The only thing I had going for me is the fact that God gave me some brains, and for some reason, my brains got me into some classes that I never. I don't think I could have. If I had asked to be in these classes, I couldn't be there. Eventually, my dad came home just before I graduated from high school. He said, "Wes, what are you going to do now that you're about to graduate?" And I said, "I want to go to college." And it put a big smile on his face. And he said, "Oh my gosh, my son's gonna go to college." And I felt good that he was smiling. He was like, "Yo, great, he's going to college." So he asked me, he said, "So what school are you going to?" I said, "I don't know." And he gave me this strange look like, that's strange. He said, "What school did you apply to?" And I said, "I didn't." Now the look got even stranger. And he was like, "How do you plan on going to school if you don't know what school you're going to and you haven't applied to a school?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I've been waiting for you to tell me that from all the stuff that you've done in life, you've stashed some money away somewhere, somehow, and you're going to tell me how much money it was, and I could go on and pick the school I wanted to go to." And that's the story of my life, being naive to whatever's going on, just not knowing anything, not knowing the truth, not knowing. It's like having the ism, not knowing the truth from the false. Before even alcohol even became my biggest friend. So anyway, he told me you need to get a job, and I eventually got a job in Boston, where I've been for the past 50 something years. And I came into Boston, and I was sort of afraid about Boston. I had heard about the alcoholics, drug addicts, prostitutes, pimps. I was like, wow. But I got down here and I found that someone asked me one day, "How would you like to go out and have a beer?" And I was like, wow, a beer. It wasn't so much the beer that I was amazed about, but I considered myself, I had made a friend. And I had seen this guy, I saw this guy every day as I walked from my job to where I was staying, which was a YMCA, because I didn't trust the bus, I didn't trust the train. I didn't want to be part of society per se, because I was afraid I'd get caught up into something that I would never get myself out of. Anyway, that friend, his name was Keith. We developed a fast friendship, and he started showing me the ins and outs of living and loving the fun type of Boston. He showed me where the clubs were. I thought it was fantastic to be able to go to particular clubs where you had live entertainment, people that you would hear on the radio or you would be buying their records, but I was seeing them live and in living color. And in the meantime, I'm drinking all the time with my friend Keith and a few others that he introduced me to, and I didn't realize what alcohol was doing to me. I just thought, you wake up, you drink too much, you fall asleep. You drink too much, you wake up late for work, and it's crazy. But anyway, I eventually left that job. Another part of my story that I'm pretty naive about is women. I had met this woman, and I just thought, wow, somebody actually likes me. And I didn't realize that my drinking and other things that I was involved with at the time were causing a problem. And eventually I left this particular woman for someone else. My thinking was all confused. If a person didn't do what I wanted them to do, I would go somewhere else, whether it be my drinking, it didn't matter. But anyway, drinking and other things got me into trouble. I left that job I came to Boston for. I got a better job at a corporation, a big corporation, New England Telephone Company. They allowed me to be one of the first male telephone operators in Boston, and I thought that was fantastic. Now not knowing that alcohol and drugs was becoming a problem, but one of the problems that I said was solved because I became an operator was there are women all around me. I don't have to go out chasing women. Of course, being as naive as I have always been, I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. Well, anyway, 6 months after getting this job with the phone company, my boss brought me into her office and she said, Wes, 6 months ago when we hired you, we thought you were one of the nicest persons in the world, and we gave you an opportunity to come here and start your career, but you're screwing it up. And I'm like, how am I doing that? She said, well, you don't come to work on time. Some days you don't come to work at all. And then there are days that you come and you seem to be hungover. And we can't have that. In order for you to maintain this job, you have to be here every single day, as straight as an arrow, or else you're going to lose the job. And I had told myself, I'm not losing this job. So for the 6 months of probation that they put me on, I found through hook and by crook a way of coming to work on time every single day. Even if it meant that from wherever I was, I went directly to work. I did not go home. I did not take a bath. I just went straight to work. And at the end of 6 months, I met another woman. I moved out of Boston to a city, suburb called Lawrence, Mass. You would think that after all that I've gone through in dealing with craziness behind alcohol and other things, that I would want to straighten out my life. And perhaps I probably did. In my mind, I was like, everything's going to be okay. Maybe if I just leave Boston, everything will change. When I met this woman and moved in with her and her family, um, the only thing I could think about is when I asked, I said, where do all the party people go? In my mind, all I wanted to do was party. I had a job, that's fine. But I just wanted to party. I hadn't grown up yet. I was still being as naive as I've been. She told me where the people partied in Lawrence, and that became my second love. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to work, and she'd be lucky if I came home at any decent hour. Eventually, 2 years later, I was coming home from a night out or a day out or whatever out, and she was packing. I'm like, "Oh, we're moving." She said, "No, I'm moving. I don't know where you're going. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Again, no one would, outside of my boss in Boston talked about my drinking. No one else was telling me I had a problem with alcohol. If they did, I didn't want to hear it. So I ended up moving back into a YMCA in Lawrence, and my problems started to mount. So because now I was being subjected to being searched by the police because they were stopping me for drinking in public, smoking in public, urinating, doing all these things in public that I shouldn't be doing. But at the time, I thought everybody else was doing it, so why are they picking on me? And eventually, I left Lawrence, came back to Boston, and dry goods got into my life. And it was just crazy. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't see alcohol as and other things being a problem. How could it be a problem if all I'm looking at is the party aspect of it? Well, eventually, still working for the phone company, I was maneuvering my way up the financial status in the company with a different job that I was going to, and I finally got a job as an installation repair technician. And in this particular field, I was going out to different people's houses, installing phones and repairing phones. And one particular day, I would say June, July of 1984, I walked into this client's house. His name was Aaron Faith, and I'll be forever grateful for God putting Aaron into my life. When I got into his house, I noticed on his living room table he had an assortment of things that I seem to love. And I'll just say dry goods. And we became fast friends. We became such good friends that he told me that I could buy the car that he was trying to sell, and I could do it in installments. And in September of that year, still being friends, one Thursday night I get out of work, and one of the things that we did on a regular basis is that on Thursdays when we got paid, we go to this bar and we'd sit and tell our tale of woe of what our day was like. Again, I'm not thinking alcohol or other things are causing problems because I'm making it to work. Even though I wasn't the best worker, I was showing up when I was supposed to, and they weren't saying anything to me. And along the way, one Thursday, we're at the bar, and there's a friend of ours that a coworker who's at the bar, but he's not drinking. And me and I'm so smart. I asked him, I said, "Why are you coming to a bar and not drinking?" And he said, "I have a problem. I have sickness. I have a disease towards alcohol. It just puts me in a different specter of life." And I'm like, "Huh?" I said, "How did you find that out?" He said, "Well, we have an EAP program. And if you go to EAP, they will explain this problem or this disease that I have that, the only thing I really heard was if you go to EAP, you can get 4 hours off of work with pay, no questions asked." And I was like, "Sign me up, I'm going." So I eventually get to EAP. This guy tells me how a day at a time he was staying sober for 14 years. And he said, "If you think you have a problem," that optimum word, if. When he said if, I'm like, okay, it's not me. I don't have a problem. But he said, "Wes, if you ever need help, I'll be here to help you. But I cannot help you if you don't want to help yourself." A year later, I was back in his office because I had totaled Aaron's car. Um, and I was there only because Aaron was a transplanted lawyer from San Francisco. And the reason I keep Aaron's name in my mind is and in my heart is because Aaron Faith. First time I had heard the word faith and it had meaning. It had meaning as a friend, number one, but it also had meaning because when he looked at my case and he said, "Wes, do you think you have a problem with alcohol or other things?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, looking at your query, if you go into the judge's chambers, he's going to throw the book at you. So I suggest that you do something different than just walking to his office. And I immediately ran back to EAP. They sent me to a detox, and that's where my recovery started. I say that's where my recovery started because I heard a couple of things in detox that I've taken with me ever since. The first was that I was in a room with a roommate who told me how he had been in and out of detoxes anywhere between 18, 19, maybe 20 times. And I thought, how silly can that be? But I didn't understand the disease of alcoholism. I didn't understand alcoholism at all. But how it will rear its ugly head at the wrong time and people. But I've learned from staying sober, what happens when you're not doing something about your drinking. The other thing was a counselor who told me that if I left detox and picked up a drink or a drug, if there were three places I would end up: jails, institution, or death. And I'm like, nah, not me. Because at that point, I really hadn't accepted the fact that I was an alcoholic. So I left the detox with, he said, oh, if those three things didn't happen, I'll be sitting here waiting when you return to this detox. And I was pissed. I was like, I'm not coming back to this, not me. So I left there with the determination that I was going to show this counselor he didn't know what he was talking about. I also left there with a prescription for a drug called Antabuse, and they told me that Antabuse was a drug that if you drank on it, you would get deathly ill. And I told myself, well, that would be my rescue. Just in case I wanted to drink, I could take one of these pills and it'll keep me from drinking because I didn't want to get sick. So like I said, I left with this idea. I'm going to show this man he doesn't know what he's talking about. I had heard a few other things in there because they had commitments coming in talking about how Alcoholics Anonymous had helped them change their lives. One of the things they talked about was they said, Wes, while you're in detox, why don't you start praying? And I was like, praying to who and for what? They said, well, praying to a God of your understanding. I had none, so I didn't know who I was praying to. He said, pray that you can walk out of here without picking up a drink or other substances. And for some reason, I started doing that while I was in detox. And then, of course, they had talked about another suggestion was that when you leave a detox, start going to meetings, start into getting your act together in reference to doing something about your drinking, and these people at Alcoholics Anonymous can help you. So I left that detox with a couple of suggestions and a chip on my shoulder that I was going to show this counselor. He didn't know what he was talking about. I eventually made it to week after week, day after day. I was going to meetings and I was starting to feel good about myself. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing drugs. I was saving. I was waking up mornings and I felt great. And I had the money I had in my pocket the night before. And along the way, they had also mentioned if you get an opportunity, join a group, get a sponsor, and continue to stay active in your recovery. I eventually went to this particular group. It's called the Sugar Hill Group of Roxbury, where I met my first sponsor. And this guy sort of like, he adopted me like a second son. Everywhere he went, I went. He'd call me up I'd get out of work at 5. I'd be home by 6. My phone would ring at 6:05, and it would be John. And John would say, Wes, I'm coming to get you. In the first couple of days, I would say, where are we going? And he said, we're going to a meeting. And he'd show up with 3 or 4 people in the car. And I'm like, who the hell are all these people? He was other people. He was doing the same kind of service, picking them up, taking them meetings. And I didn't understand it. And of course, it was just a matter of time before, as they say, if you don't get AA will get you. But I was enjoying what was going on in my life. And slowly but surely, I just continued to stay sober. I went to all the meetings that he took me to, and it didn't matter what the meetings were. I didn't understand a lot of things, but I did understand that if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get drunk. And I was doing that on a regular basis. Somewhere within my second or third year, my job had given me a temporary promotion. And I'm like, wow, this AA thing is actually working. They actually give me a temporary promotion. because I was coming to work, I was doing my job, I was doing more than my share. I didn't have time to goof off anymore. I didn't feel like I needed to goof off. So I was doing, as my boss would say, I'm doing twice as much work as my fellow men. And I'm like, wow. But I just felt good about doing it. And one day, John asked me, he said, "So Wes, how are you enjoying the sobriety?" I said, "John, I can't complain. I'm saving money. I'm not drinking. I got a temporary promotion at my job. You know, I could go to work in a suit, almost a shirt and a tie, and I'm feeling great about myself. I just love what AA is doing for me." And he said, there's more work to be done in your recovery than just staying sober and just going to meetings. And he said, that meeting we go to on Tuesday nights, and it was a step meeting. And I'm like, yeah, it's a step meeting at the hospital. He said, have you been reading and understanding the steps? I said, no, because every time we read, I ask you questions. And so he said, well, we're going to go through the steps, you and I, just you and I, no one else, just you and I. And that's when he started teaching me or telling me or showing me, explaining to me how the steps work in my life. And if I were to incorporate these steps into my life, um, I could have a great recovery. It was just, I, I just didn't know what I was missing. As a result of following the dictates of what the steps are all about, going to meetings, getting involved in service, because John would always tell me, s- volunteer for this, volunteer for that. And it was always doing service, whether it be on a group level or uh, worldwide level, because I got involved with our central service, and they did a lot of stuff throughout New England, and I just loved every minute of it. And so I continue to do all these things: don't drink, go to meetings, ask for help, work with others, and just be a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and not knowing I was being a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but wanting to be a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, wanting to be a good person of life. And then it somewhere when COVID hit, and I want to jump to when COVID hit. When COVID hit, none of us knew what was going to happen in reference to going to meetings. And someone mentioned to us about Zoom. I'm like, what the hell is Zoom? And they tell me that Zoom's been around for quite a few years prior to us incorporating it because of COVID. And so once I found out about Zoom, I'm like, I want to know all I need to know so I can go to as many meetings as I possibly could. And having this platform has allowed me to not only travel the world, but meet different people from all over the world. But the most important thing that I found, I was able to get into a workshop, a step study, a big book step study workshop. And in this workshop, excuse me again, I was able to take a deep dive into the steps. And this deep dive got me to look deeper into my life. All the things that I thought I was doing correctly. Yeah, I might not been drinking. Yeah, I might not be lying all the time, but it got me to look at some of the symptoms that were within me. And I got to understand and realize that the most important thing about my recovery is how real or how honest I can be with myself. And being in this I call it a class because I'm learning so much about myself, so much about the steps. And it just keeps me involved in wanting to be the best Wes that I could be today. It's been tough, but it's been rewarding because every day I wake up and I feel like I'm getting closer to an understanding of that the God aspect. What does God want from me? What is God's will for me? And I've taken it upon myself to, as I've been doing this work in this workshop, I've take it upon myself to look at the 11th step prayer. And if I could live half as well as 11-step prayer talks about. If I could be a channel of God's spirit or God's grace in my life, if I could help someone in need, if I could be comforting, if I could be loving, if I could be shed some joy, some happiness to someone, giving away all that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me the opportunity to be a part of. And I'm getting tired of not seeing myself. You cannot start your video. Okay, no problem, no problem. Um, I'm set. I'm saying that to say this program has taught me to live a life that I never wanted to live before. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous not because I wanted to stop drinking and doing stuff. I came in here to not go to jail, but you guys have given me so much more. It's given me an opportunity to just look at life the way, and please forgive me, this is just my story, so I'm not trying to offend anyone. It's given me an opportunity to see the way that God wants me to live. And I've adopted this thought in my head that if I continue to work these steps to the best of my ability to be the best Wes that I can be, to be the best AA member I can be, to be the best husband I can be, to be the best father I can be, if I do all of these things, when that day comes that I go to the pearly gates, and again, this is just my story, when I get to the pearly gates, I would hope that my higher power would say, Wes, good job, come on in. Instead of saying, no, Wes, you need to go back to remedial class because there's some things that you're not clear about right now. You weren't doing some of the things that you need to do to come in here. And I say that because I listen when we say the Lord's Prayer, it talks there's a part that says, give us this day our daily bread on earth as it is in heaven. How is it in heaven? From what I understand, and again, my story, and I didn't have anything to do with church and all that, but I've gotten an understanding that from what I've heard, that in heaven, it's going to be a glorious place where I'm welcomed. I don't have the hatred. I don't have anger. I don't have frustration. Everybody's having a great time in heaven. We often say our friends that have passed away in this program have gone to the big meeting in the sky where they're having a great time, laughing and joking. It's like, yeah, remember when we used to? I want to be that. I want to be able to go up there and say, okay, thank you for letting me in. But I can't do it if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing here on earth. Again, I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous to learn this stuff. But as a result of being here, staying here, for the time that I've been here, I've gotten an understanding that's the way God would want me to live. That would be God's will for me. It's not just not drinking and doing drugs. It's living a life, accepting my brothers and sisters as they are. Not the way that Wes would want them to be, but they are your brothers and sisters. Love them, care about them, show them something that they might not have seen before. And I say that because people look at me today and they're like, you're not the same person. We don't know. Some days we don't understand, where do you get these thoughts from? Because they make sense. I wasn't making sense back in the day, but I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's been the best classroom I have ever been in. And I say that not to say that I'm going to graduate, because no one gets A's, B's, C's, or D's. We don't graduate. We don't get a sheepskin or none of that. But we get a better understanding. We get a better life. We get a way of life that I know for me, I never knew. But it's a way of life that had I known, this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I'm just trying to do it to the best of my ability. In telling my story, I often talk about there are only two books that I know for a fact teach us about how to live. One being the Bible, and it's like, even though I don't go to church and I don't read the Bible on a regular basis, I do read a segment of the Bible during my meditation these days. And that's something, meditation, what was that? I understand that. You guys taught me that. I'm learning a little bit more about myself, a little bit more about life. And then the other one being the big book, of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those two books have given me a knowledge of my life and a life that I could have if I continue to do them. If I continue to read what I'm reading, practice what they ask me to practice, and just enjoy life. And I guess in closing, I would say we all have a date with destiny. We don't know where it is, when it is, but it's going to happen. But in the meantime, while I'm here on earth, why can't I enjoy everything that I'm doing, the life that I'm living, and sharing it with others, and being able to share how I reached the decisions that I make today, to not lie, to not cheat, to not steal, to not drink, to go to meetings. People say, Wes, you've been sober over 40 years. Why are you still going to those meetings? I need to keep coming to meetings to meet the people that some people tell me what happens to them what happens when you don't go to meetings. I need to come to meetings to reinforce that I am doing the right thing, because each and every one of you tell me, as we continue to stay sober, these are the things that we must do. It's something. My first sponsor said, Wes, when I asked him, I said, how many of these meetings do I have to go to? He said, Wes, how often did you drink? I drink every day. So I go to meetings every day. And it's like, I just continue to learn more and more and more. And I am so truly grateful. Whereas one of our member of another group I belong to says, I'm a happy customer of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes, I have paid my dues and I don't need any change. The change I'm getting is within me. And that's only because I continue to show up a day at a time. It's I don't know how long I've been talking, but he said, when I get tired of hearing myself, I'm not so much tired of hearing myself, but it'd be great to hear from some of you. I will close by saying, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love what God has given me. He pushed me into Alcoholics Anonymous, and Alcoholics Anonymous pushed me back to say, go find out what he wanted you to find out. And so with that, I can only say that God loves you, and so do I, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Thanks, Wes. Sorry for being late. Unfortunately, the plane was an hour and a half late, but I got to hear you anyway. Lock, stock, and barrel.
Thanks, Marcy.
And you know, when you were on about going up to the pearly gates, I know what's going to happen when you get up there, man. He's going to say, come on, baby, come on. Libby, I just have to do that for Libby. Sorry, Wes, but Wes, I love your story. I love your enthusiasm, and we've crossed paths on meetings. And you mentioned something about Zoom. I was just getting a coffee. I'm just in the door. And if it wasn't for Zoom, look at all these people here from all over the world. And I've spent the last 9 days over in the UK, and I've met so many members from this group over the last couple of years. I've met about 250 of them. My mission is to meet them all. I don't know if I'll do that. Libby won't come over, but I'm heading over to the States for the World Convention. But I appreciate you coming here, Wes. I love your positivity. And for me, that's what it's about. It's going away with a smile on your face, you know. Nick the Ferret.
Thanks, Mossy. Glad to see you on there. Look, no jumper on. Have you noticed?
Oh.
He's back in where it's warm. Wes, I enjoyed your chair. I identified the bit I loved most was when you said about 11th prayer. St. Francis prayer, because my sponsor always kept reading that to me when I first came in, and I didn't know it was called the 11th step prayer then. You know, it was St. Francis's prayer. But that's what I try on to do on a daily basis. You know, if I see, you know, so happiness, you know, try to get people to have some hope. Yeah, and it's working for me in this fellowship. And I came in the fellowship to get people off my back, but I've stayed And now I have a life beyond my wildest dreams, you know, and my family, you know, because they are getting well as well. Right. That's me over. And Angie is going to read the promises.
Anti-alcoholic. The promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled amongst us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Okay, there's a few thank yous. We just want to say to the people that helped us tonight with the security and the waiting room and stuff, the co-hosts. Thank you very much. Kathleen, thank you very much for doing timekeeping. And also, I'd like to thank Carol for volunteering and stepping in and holding the boat until Wes got in. And of course, last but not least, Wes, thank you very much for sharing your experience, strength and hope with us tonight. Okay, Mike.
Right. Reminder, this meeting is on 7 days per week at the same time. We also have a lunchtime meeting every Sunday at 1 o'clock UK time. This is a step 11 meditation meeting. And on Thursday evenings, we have a meeting at 7:30 UK time. We use the same meeting code for all the meetings. We also remember we have this meeting every Saturday.
Okay.
Right.
Stick around for fellowship after the meeting. If you want to use a breakout room, please let me know. The yellow card.
Who you see here?
What you hear here.
When you leave here.
Let it stay here. Chat will be enabled as we close the meeting with the Serenity Prayer with the mics open, and I'd like to invite Wes. I'd like to invite you to close the meeting with the Serenity Prayer, please.
Thank you. I just want to say, I'm sitting here listening to everyone. I've heard the story about warm and fuzzies, and I just got a warm and fuzzy feeling just being here with you. So thank you so much for helping me stay sober a day at a time. Help me stay sober for the next 24. And with that, the Serenity Prayer is God.
Grant us serenity
to
to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can,
and the wisdom to know the
so the
difference. Thank you so much, Wes.
Thanks for having me.
Really, really nice.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Carol.